Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the 14th audio file in the audio cast series known as the Q News Patriot. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SGAnon. Thank you to all of you listening from all across our great world and our great earth. I have splendid and encouraging news for each of you this evening. I know that it has been a few days since we have been with one another. A lot of things have happened in that amount of time. We have a great deal to be thankful and grateful for. We are moving right along at breakneck speed. We are now approaching 48 hours into Red October, and it will be a month to remember. I am given those assurances by the individual that I am connected to, and I'm also given those assurances based in the calm breakdowns that I see, and we're going to talk a little bit about both of those. First thing we're going to do is talk a little bit about 45's rally yesterday. Let's go ahead and get right down to it. So 45 held a rally in Michigan yesterday, an absolutely beautiful spectacle it was. Absolutely laden with comms as well. We had the 17% and the 17 flags. We had President Trump talking about how, in his opinion, he doesn't believe that we're going to have fair elections ever again in this country, which I believe was a giant heads up to all of you. The president also spoke about the corruption surrounding 44 a little bit, spoke about Russia, which of course we all know is a big topic for 45 at the rallies. One of the reasons that Russia and things pertaining to Russia is such a big deal, one of the reasons, but certainly not by any means the only reason. But one of the reasons is that, this whole situation with Russia and the conspiracy to oust a sitting U.S. president and a lawful civilian government became a very big pivot point, a fulcrum in this entire plan. We know that President of the United States, Hussein Obama, 44, ran a shadow government and weaponized every agency and power available at his disposal to spy on or interfere with the Trump campaign and later the Trump presidency itself. We know that shadow government was run out of Washington, D.C., along with a deal of complicity from all of the federal government agencies and elected agencies as well, the Congress and the Supreme Court. And so I believe one of the reasons Trump continues to highlight, no collusion, the primarily upstanding and above board behavior and conduct as it pertains to Russia and all of that, is because it's going to become a boomerang essentially for the other side. And so our mass consciousness awareness as a general public here in the United States of America and certainly around the world is going to be a little bit whiplashed, because we're going to have all of these things over the last 5, 6, 7 years that everybody has come to believe about Trump. And it's like this, it's a cultural exhaustion sort of thing that's been drummed into us with nail-biting precision. And we're going to have a really hard whiplash to, oh, but wait, all of that was actually the other side. And so with that, maybe we should talk a little bit about one of the comms that I found absolutely fascinating that came out of the rally yesterday. Trump spent quite a few minutes talking about the old post office in Washington, D.C. He spoke at length about, beautifying the old post office and redoing the old post office, and how it, once it was redone, that it brought beauty and splendor. It was a work of art to Washington, D.C. But he described the old post office as, quote, it was shot. It was broken down, dilapidated. The old post office was shot. And so many of you that have listened to me for a little while and have been involved in deciphering the movement for a little while are familiar that, whenever we hear action verbs or repeated phrases, intentional misspeaks or misdirections, things like that, they're really worth focusing in on. This is a special forces clandestine military operation, communications that have to be given to the general public um, by certain individuals involved in the operation, including the commander in chief. They can't come right out and say it. It would jeopardize operational safety and security, but it would also um, send the mass population into a panic as it got spun by what's left of the mainstream media. We are cleaning up that um, area, but in order to do so without just completely ripping the entire scab off and causing worse damage, we have to sleuthfully go through and leverage, finance, um, politic a little bit, leverage some power, and get influence established in there. And we're just not there yet for him to come out and say things like that. But he does come out and talk a lot about the old post office. And so when you do the gematria on the words of the old post office, that gematria comes out to 178. You can go through and search the simple gematria meanings for 178. I use one of the online aggregators. A lot of them come through there. One of the things that comes through is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I don't believe that that's a particular com, but I think that's an interesting crossover with the Supreme Court and how the death of Justice Ginsburg allowed for that third final justice that Trump was able to get in. And so that's going to come into play later. And I think in many ways has already come into play behind the scenes. But the other thing that comes up with 178 that I thought was very interesting for each of you is the words President Barack Obama. And so, the commander in chief described the old post office yesterday a couple of different times, very, forcefully, that it was just shot. It was shot, and he used that term. And so I think that based on this interpretation, it is not out of the realm of possibility whatsoever that the commander in chief was telling us that 44 has been apprehended by JAG and has been executed. And so, that being said, those of you that have followed this movement for a while know that, lots of these operations have already happened behind the scenes with video and documented proof that is, as we're told by those above us, supposed to come out to corroborate, how things have gone down. But the crux of the operation, as we've talked on this show several times, had to happen with the public still asleep. We would have thrown the public into mass civil unrest. Consider even now a large segment of the population that doesn't engage with this particular sort of broadcast or media. They still maybe have, even if they don't love, President 44 or even some of the other presidents, they still have respect for the office, and they harbor an ill-found and ill-advised but completely innocent respect for the previous holders of that office. Their treason coming out to the masses is going to have to be, a very precise balancing act as we go through this next phase. So I believe 45 is telling us that we are, extremely, extremely close, that we are that we're catching them, that we're getting them, and we're taking care of them. A couple other things to notice from 45 as it relates to comms. Today, we're going to switch gears a little bit off of the rally. There were other comms in the rally, but that was the biggest one that I found just from having gone back and watched. I wasn't able to watch it live, unfortunately. But today, 10/2/2022 at 17:57 Eastern Date Time, the commander-in-chief comes out on TruthSocial and says, "The silent majority is back," in all caps. And I looked at that and I thought, well, let's go ahead and go and plug this into the Q drops, the word silent majority. And wouldn't you know it, the very first drop that comes up, it's a delta from September 29th, so it's a few days removed. The timestamp is 4, 4, and 5 seconds. So 4:04 and 5 seconds. The timestamp is, or the Q post is, Twitter has been given the green light to blanket censor all content deemed to threaten their survival, capitalized, and then election in brackets relating to the content to be censored. Google and FB will follow. Expect comms blackout attempt, POTUS Twitter. Rogue employee excuse. Welcome to the police state. They know if they lose, it's over. The time to fight is now. Now, isn't that interesting? Didn't 45 say in the rally last night that the time is now? The time to stand up is now. The time to go out and vote is now. Didn't he drive home the point, the time is now, several times? Pay attention to these repetitive phrases. These are very calculated messages that are being delivered to you, but you have to be all ears and all eyes in to catch them sometimes. Good versus evil. Humanity is at stake. Drop the memes. Silent majority no more. Be loud. You have a voice. 45 talked a lot yesterday about the people's voice. Are you registered? Vote them all out. Prepare. Red October. We stand together. That's Q drop 2298. I believe 45's silent majority truth today was a direct heads up for Red October, for what's about to happen, for the communications blackout that we've talked about a couple of different times now. What's going on with Putin in Europe is directly tied to that communications blackout. The things that are going on with the energy markets around the world are multifold, and the communications blackout is one of the angles that will spin off of those crises that are currently developing. We are living in amazing times, and the communications from the military command and the commander-in-chief at the very top are, they couldn't be more clear about where we're at. So speaking of comms, those are the biggest comms I've noticed from 45 in the last 36 hours or so. But as we all know, Dan Scavino is also involved heavily in the Q clearance, D-class, and exposure. And we have a post today from Dan Scavino on TruthSocial, posted at 16:50 Eastern Date Time. The post says, "Nice catch," and it has a pin in the middle, an ink pen emoji. Slow motion replay. And so it is a picture of President 45, or excuse me, a video of President 45, the commander-in-chief, catching and receiving and what looks like maybe an ink pen or a Sharpie to give an autograph out as he's exiting the stage in Michigan. And so I immediately plugged in 1650 and looked for a few different things in the Q drops. I didn't find anything with the word 1650. I didn't find anything interesting or really pertinent for drop 1650. But when I put in 4:50 for the timestamp, one of the very first posts on the top, Q post 4445, posted at 7:14 and 50 seconds. There's your 450 right there on June the 10th of 2020, states follow the pin with a Twitter status attached. So understand just for a moment, let's talk about this just for a moment. 45's truth just a minute ago that we were discussing, the silent majority is back, and when I found is Q drop 2298. That Q drop was dropped at a timestamp of 4 minutes and 5 seconds. If you delete the zeros, we have 4:45. Over here with Dan Scavino, we have a drop 4:45 at 7:14 and 50 seconds. All right. So when we open the link, the attached Twitter status in 4445, referenced today by Dan Scavino in his TruthSocial post, remarkably, it is still on Twitter. It is from Christina Wong. Christina Wong is a Pentagon correspondent. Christina Wong is on TruthSocial and Instagram, and this status is from June the 10th of 2020. The status reads, "Soon, Director of National Intelligence Ratcliffe has declassified documents related to Russiagate and ordered them sent to Congress. Big release expected imminently." We what we have today, folks, in light of Trump's rally, we've had a lot of attention brought to Russia. We've had a lot of world attention brought to Russia over the last week or so. Things are only heating up in Europe as it pertains to Russia, and now we have the commander in chief and his social media guy, basically both of them pointing to Russia and Russiagate and Red October. I think that we are being told that Red October will be a D class for some of the nefarious activities related to treason in Russiagate. I believe we're going to have a D class centered around President 44's activities, as I've stated a couple of times, regarding nuclear terrorism around the world. I think all of this is going to dovetail and tie into the Biden corruption in Ukraine. In short, their house of cards is just absolutely disintegrating. It's disintegrating around them. It's embarrassing and painful to watch. And they deserve every bit of it. This has been a hard fought journey. The sacrifices that have been made to get humanity to this point are incalculable and I think unrecountable. We have serious joy that we can look forward to, and we are being given updates as best as we can receive them. When you consider that our enemies are also, watching the same media that we are, listening to this broadcast and other broadcasts, we are being guided by, those that seek to save this country. And it is a truly amazing show to witness when you are tuned in, tapped in, and, really, really attuned to the message that is being given. And so, speaking of messages being given, I have some great information to relay to all of you from the individual that I really trust quite a lot for all of this. I was enjoying some family time yesterday, and I got the communique on my device, and it essentially said that the emergency alert system is incoming and can be expected. And so I began to do a little bit of research. I jumped over on the Tor browser, and I found some interesting information regarding events in DC over these last few days. The United States military has been, well, let me give some context here before we get into the meat. The United States military has been identifying traitors, seditionists, and enemy assets for a really long time, certainly longer than the 2020 election. This has been going on at least since 2016-17. So we are arriving now at the point where things are going to have to go public pretty soon. We have arrived at the point of bankruptcy for the Federal Reserve System. We're at a boiling point here in the United States of America as it pertains to election security, with midterms supposedly looming just over a month away. This is going to have to go public eventually. The military's last task after establishing their reconnaissance and battle plans is to ensure that their own side is free of saboteurs, extremists, kamikazes, things that could derail the operation or cause it to be ineffective in some way. And so that has been going on. That identification process has been going on now for several months, and we are nearing the end of that as well. The information that I was given is that military commanders were in Washington, D.C. together, or in the area of Washington, D.C. together over this last few days. and they were there to discuss the actual logistic implementation of the nationwide emergency presidential alert system, and to outline the final plan details on how to activate 11.3 and retake the government of the United States of America. And so, understanding that we're still expecting an indictment for the commander in chief from the fake deep state Biden propped up government, understanding that we have these unstoppable forces converging between 44's nuclear terrorism and the corruption of 44 and Biden and Hillary and the Clintons and Soros in Ukraine, combining with the bioterrorism that's gone on in several governments and many governments all around the world. These forces have now come out to a point that they're not going to be stopped. And so, bearing that in mind, we are, according to my individual, we are at the point where the emergency alert implementation is physically occurring now, and we should expect to see something on that, I would say, within the next month or so. I wasn't given an exact time frame, and I never am. But considering the litany of communications regarding how difficult October is going to be, we have the banking system in absolute free fall and has been now for not quite a month, coming up on a month. The QFS has had more than 2 years to run alongside all of the old system and drop its feelers into all of the nooks and crannies. So we are at that point, I think, where we're going to see something dramatic, and we're going to see it probably pretty soon. I personally believe that the sequence of events could look something along the lines of false flag being blamed on the climate, and that leading us to a nuclear standoff event. All of this coinciding with the collapse of the monetary system and an attempted change to a new system. And then I believe all of this will culminate. This is only my personal opinion. I haven't confirmed this sequence of events, but it is my belief that all of that will culminate in the fake government of the United States suspending the electoral process and the United States military stepping in and relieving that fake government of their authority, and also conducting a special election for all affected races in the United States of America over the last, certainly the last 2 years, but perhaps even years before that. We're going to see some intense change over the next 8 to 12 weeks. I think that we need to be prepared. I think that we need to be ready. And I am extremely excited to be telling all of you that we have lived through the softening up the target process, and we are now about to begin official bombardment in a way that even your sleepers are going to wake up and realize, hey, this isn't right. This isn't normal. And I think that's the point where we're going to be compelled into a new awareness as a culture and as a great people around the world. This operation will kick off publicly in the USA, but it is my personal belief that coordination at the military level, well, it's not my belief, I know this, coordination at the military level is going to lead to a cascading effect around the world. We are going to see governments brought down because of economic and financial crisis and replaced with governments of the people. We are going to see militaries ordering certain governments in certain key places around the world to stand down. And we will see the implementation of implementation is not the right word. We will see the unveiling of a worldwide safety net that has been put in place by incredible patriots from every country all across this great earth to do the hard lifting for us and protect us at the moment of true change. And the moment of true change is here. We are nigh at hand. We've got Scavino pointing to, a flood of information regarding Russiagate. We have individuals talking about, electronic election interference and new data coming out with that. We have, individuals like Kash Patel highlighting the next level corruption going on in agencies like the FBI and the DOJ. We have the commander in chief doing his public relations thing while giving us, breadcrumbs and letting us know that, Red October is coming and censorship is coming. All of you are about to be censored like you've never been censored before. We are at the point where, the Kabbalist superstructure is fighting for its very survival. And when you fight for your very survival, you fight to keep, the winner keeps it all. So you fight to keep it all. And they are going to fight to keep it all. And the best part about that is, in so doing, they will be forced to out themselves to all of the sleepers. It would be akin to the wolf dressed in, the sheep's coat, throwing off the sheep's coat in the middle of the sheep. And that's one of the metaphors I think we should keep in mind, because we're going to watch them implode on themselves. Unfortunately, we're going to be along for the ride, but we will survive this and they will not. And so, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the EAS is near, it is imminent, it is being planned and orchestrated physically at the present time. Interestingly enough, I did a little bit of digging today just around the truther community, and there is some suggestion in the community. I haven't confirmed this with my individual or other truthers, but there's some suggestion in the community that in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, and while Hurricane Ian was going on, U.S. Special Forces Command conducted operations against traitorous FEMA agents in the Floridian Peninsula and along the southeast seaboard. I can't corroborate that, but that information would make some amount of logical sense, coinciding with what I can corroborate, which is that the military domestic forces in charge of protecting the country and the homeland have begun implementing a physical rollout plan for a simultaneous national emergency alert. And so, with that being said, everyone, we're going to talk just a little bit really fast about some of your emails and questions regarding precious metals, and I will let you go for the evening. As I put on my TruthSocial account today, which is at real SGAnon, I stated that I was having access issues with Proton Mail. Those access issues are more specifically defined as encryption, decryption issues on my end. And so I have not quite 200 unread emails from many of you out there that I am unable to decrypt and actually read. And so, with that being said, in order to help answer a lot of the questions that many of you have sent out to me, I updated the video descriptions with some basic, just very general references and recommendations in my experience for good sources, resources for precious metals. You're welcome to explore those resources without sending me a communication. You're also welcome to wait for me to reply. Once I'm able to sort these issues out, I will be replying to all of the emails that I've received. It is going to take me a little bit longer than I had originally hoped, and I apologize. Such is the 21st century technological life. We are headed into a fantastic age where these sorts of issues are extremely unlikely to occur. And I just ask and implore for your patience and grace as we go through this, and as I go through getting some of these tech issues sorted on my end. And so, with that in mind, if you have questions or concerns regarding precious metals, especially from having listened to Anon Audio File 11 or 12 or both, please check the video descriptions. I updated those descriptions to give a little bit of a direction and some guidance. And then I also encourage you to reach out if you have continuing questions or need further clarity, and I'll do my best to oblige you. And so, with that, ladies and gentlemen, everyone out there listening around and across our great world, be of good courage, love one another, love each other as we go through this period. Bring your sleepers around in love and compassion. They will need it. Remember that Q tells us over 90% of the population of the peoples of the world, the free peoples of the world, will align together when the true full extent is shown. And there is absolutely nothing in this entire realm that is unaccomplishable with 90% of us around this great world banded together. And so, with that being said, everyone, have a great evening, have a good week, be safe. It's going to be a wild ride. Hold on to your hats. Very excited, and we'll look forward to talking with you again soon. If we lose communications, again, we are in control, and I will be back with you the moment that I am able to be. And with that being said, this is SGAnon. I'll speak to you next time. Thanks again. Bye-bye.